What's up, guys? So I was gonna jump into my Lilith video today, the introduction for Lilith and psychotherapy, but I was kind of taken away by the intensity of the Aries shift that happened today. So I usually have really awkward sleeping patterns. I don't know if that's a typical Libra thing or if it's because I have Uranus conjunct with my moon, but I was supposed to be on my I sleep more last night than the night before kick, because I go through like mini sleep sessions and then I sleep for like 12, 14 hours, that sort of thing. And I went to bed and then I woke up right around 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'm on the west coast of the United States. And within, I think, a couple minutes of me just waking up and getting on my phone, one of my affiliates, associates, friends that's on social media, I know he's just a hobbyist astrologer, but him and I discuss a lot of events and things, and I definitely would call him an actual astrologer, if anything. But he always has very interesting things to talk about, and coincidentally, I don't know if it's like a telepathic Neptunian thing, but he always seems to message me random charts of events at the exact moment when I'm about to pull up my software, look it up for myself. So as soon as I was about to Google the time frame for the Brussels terrorist attack, I noticed that I got a message, and I opened it up and I saw it was a chart, and he's like, very fascinating, the time frame. He's like, but here's a couple of different charts. And I was like, oh my god, you're so awesome. So I wanted to use this as an example, actually, not just as a transit discussion, but as a astrotheological lesson that people will be able to understand and stick with. So in astrotheology in ancient cultures, there were specific days of the week that were associated with certain planets or some of the ancient orbs, the ancient ones. So obviously Sunday is sun day, which is essentially supposed to be the Sabbath or the sun worship. And then moon is Monday, moon day. So I find it very interesting because I'm the typical, music fan where so much of my memory capacity is wasted on lyrics and music, if anything. So I just thought of like Blue Monday. Thought that was pretty funny because blue moon is an actual astrological phenomenon. Astronomical phenomenon, as to where there are multiple full moons within a certain seasonal period on a calendar. It's more referenced in a farmer's almanac than anything. And then we can go on to Tuesday, which is today. Tuesday also sounds, I know this is my Plutonian, channeling, but I think of Doomsday, Tuesday. I'm not saying there's going to be Doomsday on Tuesday, but there's a lot of chaos and a lot of casualties that happen on Tuesday, because Tuesday is ruled by Mars. Mars is obviously the soldier, the combat, violence, war. So, that being said, today's Tuesday, and look at the attacks that happened today. Not only that, I was actually seeing something as I was scrolling through my feed, something about how some sort of, terrorist cell of ISIS or something burned down some sort of 1600-year-old Christian worship site or something like that. Pretty sure that that's separate from the Brussels thing. Honestly, I'm still kind of in a fog, and I have been too busy engaging in argumentative crap and kind of being childish throughout the majority of the morning and screwing off. And yeah, so I've just been preoccupied with that, and with this transition into Aries now, one-track mind is definitely going to be a common theme here. And actually, as a matter of fact, looks like Mercury officially went into Aries, and so I'm going to be talking like an Aries, channeling cognition like an Aries, and on Mars Day of all days. So another interesting fact I'd point out too, while we're on the subject of terrorist attacks and Mars Day, September 11th, 2001 actually happened on a Tuesday morning as well, which I always wonder, specifically with the Arabic descendants, because yes, there were other cultures that were associated with that Arabic demographic centuries, maybe even thousands of years ago now, but the majority of them have been forced into Islamic ideology. So there is origins of Persia having this impressive, substantial astrological schematics that is even still used today, or at least highlighted throughout astrological practice and definitely throughout astrotheology. So I find it fascinating that if astrology through the Dark Ages essentially was able to survive in the underground, I have a hard time believing that there isn't some underground within the Muslim Islamic world. And I'm not saying that the people that are associated with that are directly involved with terrorist plots, but I find it very fascinating, and I always wonder that. Do a lot of these attacks happen specifically because the person in question that is deciding when, where, how is doing it mentally on purpose to orchestrate some sort of theme or phenomenon? Or is this subconscious, like Plutonian humanity's behavior synchronistically just playing out residual energy about Tuesday being associated with Mars and violence? Very interesting, I always think about that. So then we move on to Wednesday, middle day of the week. It's ruled by Mercury. It's usually when people are finally getting over the groggy moon, the moon day, and then, dealing with all the conflicts on Mars Day. Another thing I find very funny too is that everybody's always groggy on Moon Day, Monday, and there is a correlating study done with people and studies with sleep that during full moons specifically there is a higher rate of insomnia with people, just because of the extra light and environmental noise essentially coming from the reflection off the moon. So that's pretty interesting. Also, because from an astropsychological perspective, the moon is your emotions. The fact that when it's full, it usually has more of an impact on people's emotional states, especially if they seem to be more of empaths or have heavy water signatures within their chart. Even fire, because those are both pretty volatile, depending on how you look at it. But water people specifically are the ones that usually have to struggle with moon phases. Specific ones, eclipses, full moons, that sort of thing. And when I say moon signs, it's not just your sun sign. Obviously, we're a little... I would hope we're a little bit beyond just, sun sign astrology. If you're not, just go skim through my Learn Astrology 101 on this channel. And go ahead and knock yourself out, because it's way beyond that. So specifically, I would say people who would have a water sign that was a moon sign. Also Mars too, would, has to do with your temperament and everything. But yeah, so middle of the week, people are finally getting their communication together, and they're getting into the swing of things, and that's when Mercury comes into play. And that's also, you can't really gauge if the week's going to be good or bad per se, unless you're like a complete full-blown cynical pessimist, which even I'm not like that all the time. So if I can do it sometimes, you guys can be optimistic sometimes too. So midfolk, which is the German word for that, which is midweek, Mercury is Wednesday, so it could go either way. And then Thursday is Thor's day. Thor is also the god of thunder, or one of those, something along that line. I just keep thinking like mad living, like word associations. I think of Jupiter. I think Zeus, thunder, God, God of gods, Jupiter, Church of Peter, Christ, First Testament, Joseph. I should just do word association videos. I think in more abstract thought like that. And the issue is that it's the same kind of concept when you ask a kid to, or you ask somebody to solve a math equation and they don't do like the actual working out the equation on the paper, and you're trying to figure out exactly how the hell they came to their conclusion, regardless if it's right or wrong. That's how I kind of am with my abstract thought. I start spitting out random associations, and then I have to piece things together like Mad Lib status. And that's also why it's difficult for me to articulate sometimes what I'm trying to say. But anyway, yeah, so Thursday's a good day, a lucky day. Thor's day, Zeus, thunder. I wonder if there's some sort of correlating thing with thunder, like thunderstorms and stuff. I'm not gonna, I'm trying to get all sidetracked and stuff now. But anyway, so then we look at Friday, which is ruled by Venus. Venus is the planet of love, Aphrodite's. And I think it's also funny, I'm thinking of another song. I was like, I don't care if Monday's blue, Tuesday's gray, and Wednesday too. Thursday, I don't care about you, but Friday, I'm in love. Robert Smith, I think you know a little bit more, or you're associating a lot of esoteric symbolism with some of your songs, than you probably let on. And he's obviously not the only one, but yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. So Venus would be the Friday. It's also date night, a lot of times for people. And then we go on, obviously, to Saturday, which is Saturn's day. And Saturn would be the church of Peter, specifically, the Old Testament God. Be the more purgatory, hell, punisher kind of God. Also be associated with Taurus. Not Aries, Taurus. The age of Taurus. And also another interesting correlation that I would put into that is that a lot of Catholics go to Mass on Saturday, because Saturn is not only the Sabbath, but it's also associated with Saturn itself. Saturn's associated with Satan. Satan's associated with Lilith. Lilith is associated with Black Moon Lilith, which is associated with sin. And then that would be why also a lot of people would go to church the next day to confess, as well as going to their confessional or Mass on Saturdays if you're Catholic. And also, another interesting thing, Saturdays are always like the wild night to go out and party or whatever. And I just find it funny that, you know, Saturn is associated with Satan, Satan is sin, that sort of thing. And obviously Saturn has that duality where Capricorn is the judge of your reputation, also the judge of just the heavens overall. So the midheaven, talking about like the as above judge. And then we also have the Aquarian archetype too. So the Aquarian is the rebellious Satan, and then Capricorn is the noble judge. So in this way, if you were to, basically Saturn brings consequence no matter what you do. If you were going to reap some sort of reward from your actions, and then the consequences would therefore be a reward factor, you would then have some sort of manifestation with Capricorn. If, for whatever crazy reason, you ended up succumbing to your Lilith or your Moon, and you ended up doing things that were not necessarily in your best interest or someone else's, then you would have to deal with the repercussions of the rebellious, eccentric, psychopathic, erratic, traumatic Uranus, Aquarian energy. And when I say Uranus, obviously that was before they knew Uranus was going on, because again, before they realized that there's planets after Saturn, the duality of rulership for Saturn was Aquarius and Capricorn. So then obviously we all know that Sunday is Sunday. It's pretty much the most literal one I can tell you about. I just thought that was very interesting. Go ahead and take the time to at least give you that little tidbit lesson while I now go over this. So in the Brussels explosion, and this is my buddy's chart that he sent me. So Tuesday March 22nd, 2016. And he has this one. He gave me quite a few, and I'll have to go back and look over it. But, oh gosh darn it. Clicked off. Come here. Yeah, so it's 8:40 a.m. and it has an Aries Sun, a Taurus rising. First things that I see, Uranus, which is the planet of trauma and chaos. That is in the 12th house at this very moment, as well as the Sun and Mercury. So some sort of traumatic conspiracy dealing with transportation or communication to a specific government or body. That's what that essentially conjunction with Uranus, the Sun, and Mercury together would be. Obviously, we don't really have the Sun close enough to Uranus per se for it to be a conjunction yet, but I'm looking at a really small thumbnail too, so just work with me. So those are all in the 12th house. 12th house is what's hidden, or things that just aren't known to the collective per se. Funny enough, because that's the collective house. But so then we look, and we've obviously been having some nasty T-squares here. So the 11th house is obviously the house of Uranus, Aquarius, which is trauma, and that is the physiological and mundane manifestation, regardless of how you look at it. There's all kinds of repercussions and side effects to things, and specifically, if there's a T-square involved with any planets that are in the 11th house, you can automatically translate that to trauma or some sort of injuries. Psychological, mental, emotional, physical. And sometimes death, depending on what's squaring with it or conjunct with it. So we have Chiron, Venus, and Neptune, all in Pisces in the 11th house. And we specifically have at least Venus and Neptune having a square with Saturn in the 7th house of law, others, and just in general relations with others. And then we have that squaring the Moon and Jupiter. And obviously we know how Jupiter works. It just kind of magnifies things. And obviously this Virgo and Pisces cognitive dissonance with this opposition going on with Jupiter and Neptune for quite some time has been causing a lot of conflict. So we obviously just recently had Mars go in Sagittarius. I don't believe it's going to get too far before it starts to go retrograde, actually. But the closer that it does get to Saturn, the more combative people are going to be. So fortunately, that actual T-square does not involve Mars right now, per se. And specifically, once we end up having some other sort of hard aspect with Uranus involved, I would expect there to be more attacks on a substantial scale. We do have a square between Mars and Venus, though, technically. Yeah, and there's a couple different aspects, actually, too. So there's a trine to Mercury. So, I mean, that would just encourage some sort of hostility or aggression or some sort of attack to do with transportation or immediate commuting. So I don't know really too much about this event specifically beyond the random news titles that I saw while scrolling through my newsfeed at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the memes that are now coming out, of course, and then what my friend sent me. So I actually haven't watched anything on it yet, and I thought this would just be kind of an interesting way to just show the validity to a chart per se. Can't give you all the answers. It's not necessarily supposed to be the answers for you, but looking at different situations, events, people, cultures, whatever, from different perspectives or different schematics can give you different pieces to a puzzle for a picture that you didn't even realize was bigger than what you see. So that's just something to take into account there. And yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of the T-squares overlapping, but I mean, it's not necessarily anything that is going to be a different kind of energy channel per se, because they're all the conjuncted planets just going in their own T-squares with that. So Specifically, I don't know, I would have to... Actually, I'm just going to cut it here. I'll do a second falter or something like that once I look into the whole Brussels thing and see how much chaos actually unfolded today that I probably missed because I've been too involved in my own drama.